We were just days away from our second wedding anniversary, and I thought we were finally in a good place. We'd survived a miscarriage, started planning a new life in the city, and I was finally becoming the man I always wanted to be. For her, for us. But one random evening, I found out the woman I loved, the woman I believed was my future, had met a stranger on Reddit to feel something other than me. This is the story of love, betrayal, silence, and rediscovery. It's about what happens when the person you trusted most becomes the one who breaks you the deepest. And it's also about hope, because even in the darkest moments, I learned something that changed my life. If you've ever questioned love, commitment, or whether people can truly change, stay with me. This is not just a story about divorce. It's a story about finding yourself when the person you loved. Tomorrow was supposed to be our wedding anniversary. 2 years of marriage, almost 6 together. And tonight, I'm packing up my life and preparing for a divorce. Why? Because the woman I vowed forever to turned to Reddit to find a stranger to sleep with while we were still trying for a baby?
Yeah, let that sink in. But if you think this is just a story about cheating, you'd be wrong. This is a story about silence, about grief, about what we hide, even from the people we love. And it's also about the moment a man realizes he was never truly seen by the person he gave everything to.
My name's Jake, and this is how the life I thought I was building, the family I was dreaming of, broke apart in ways I never saw coming. Lauren and I, we had what most people would call a solid relationship. We laughed a lot. We planned vacations. We were best friends. At least, I thought we were. Marriage didn't feel like a risk. It felt like a promise we were both ready for. We talked a lot about having kids. It wasn't some maybe one day thing. It was our why. Why we worked through the hard times. Why we got married in the first place. Raise something together. Someone. So, last summer, we started trying. And on the morning of New Year's Day, Lauren looked at me with tears in her eyes, held up a pregnancy test, and whispered, "Jake, it's positive." I lost it. Happy tears. Big, overwhelming joy. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the beginning of everything we hoped for. But just 5 weeks later, it was gone. No heartbeat, no baby. Just silence. And pain. Neither of us had the words for. I tried to be strong for her. I showed up, I held her when she cried, but what I didn't realize was that she was slipping. Not just away from me, but into a darkness I couldn't see. She didn't tell me how isolated she felt, how broken, how the silence between us started to feel louder than any scream. And I didn't ask enough times, didn't dig deep enough. So while I thought we were healing, she was looking for an escape. And one day, she found it. Not in a friend, not in therapy, but in a stranger from the internet. Because she said she just wanted to feel something. And that something wasn't me. Grief doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It sits in the corner of the room while you make dinner. It follows you into bed, turns its back to you under the covers, and stops kissing you good morning. That's what happened to us. After the miscarriage, I thought we were moving forward. We were still talking about the move to the city, closer to my sister and her kids. We were still making plans to try again. Lauren even smiled now and then, so I believed we were okay. But we weren't. She started saying less, not in a dramatic way, just less. Less How was your day? Less, can we talk? Less of the everyday intimacy that couples use to stay alive. And the worst part, I didn't push because I thought giving her space was the right thing. I told myself she'd open up when she was ready. But the truth is, I think part of me knew something was off, and I was afraid to face it. We had already tried couples therapy once before, back in the fall when things started to feel stuck. We were still trying for a baby, but I noticed her mood changing. She was colder, more distant. We went to a couple sessions and Lauren told the therapist that things were mostly fine. Just a few communication hiccups. She said we didn't need therapy anymore, said we were in a good place, and I wanted to believe her, so I did. I trusted her read on things, I always did. But what I didn't see then was that she had already started building resentment toward me. Quietly, silently, like a slow leak you don't notice until the whole house floods. She later told me that it started back then, around the time we were trying to conceive. She said I wasn't giving her what she needed emotionally, that she felt alone, unsupported. It crushed me to hear that, because I wasn't checked out. I was trying. I had my faults, God knows I did, especially with drinking. When we were engaged, Lauren told me flat out, if this is going to be our life, I don't want it. And she was right. I struggled, quit, relapsed. But in the end, I fought. I've been sober for nearly 3 years now. Even through this, I haven't touched a drop, because I swore I'd never go back to being that version of myself. Not for anyone, not for pain, not even for heartbreak. So hearing her say I wasn't there for her, that I didn't support her enough during the miscarriage, it hit me harder than anything. I thought I was supporting her. I thought I was showing up. But maybe I was showing up the way I knew how, and not the way she actually needed. And that's the difference, isn't it? The difference between love that survives and love that dies quietly behind closed doors. She never told me what she needed. I never asked hard enough. And in that space between us, something else moved in. Loneliness, doubt.
You never think it's going to be you, the one who gets cheated on. The one who sits in the shower, staring at the tile, asking yourself what the hell just happened to your life. But that was me. 1 week before our anniversary, I found out that Lauren had been sleeping with another man, a married man, a total stranger, someone she met on Reddit. No shared history, no emotional connection, just a man she could disappear into. She said the whole thing only lasted 3 weeks, said they only met twice, said she was lonely, said she just wanted to feel something. I sat there across from her at the kitchen table, barely able to breathe, listening to the woman I loved talk about how she chose to find comfort in another man's arms while we were trying to create a child together, while I was planning a life for us in a new city, while I was picturing our future. She was giving herself to someone else. She said it happened in late March, right around the time we were talking about moving closer to my sister so our future kids could grow up around family. We'd even discussed those plans with my sister and her husband, just 1 week before I found out. That's what breaks you. Not just the betrayal, but how normal everything seemed while the truth was being buried. Lauren didn't confess the affair. I had to dig it out of her, piece by piece, question after question. Every answer dragging a knife deeper into my chest. When I asked why she didn't come to me, why she didn't scream, cry, something, she just looked down and whispered, "I felt so alone, I didn't know how to tell you." And you know what? For a second, I still blamed myself, still thought maybe I failed her, maybe I didn't show up enough, maybe if I had said the right words, she wouldn't have gone looking for someone else. But then came therapy, and in therapy I started to realize something I had buried for years. Every problem in our marriage somehow ended up being my fault. My drinking, my flaws, my guilt. And when I tried to express my needs, she shut down. If I ever pointed out something she did or didn't do, I felt like I was the bad guy. I was walking on emotional eggshells in my own home. Not because I was afraid she'd explode, but because I was afraid I'd lose her. So I swallowed every unmet need, every quiet disappointment, every moment I felt unseen, uncared for, because I loved her and I thought that was enough. Even after she told her mother we were divorcing, she still didn't mention the affair, just said, "I'm really tired." That's what she told her mum. Not, "I betrayed my husband." Not, "I slept with someone else." Just, "tired." Her mum called me the next day, said she loved me, said I could trust her. So I told her the truth. And for the first time, I felt like someone finally understood what I was going through. Here's the thing, infidelity isn't just sex. It's a shattering of the truth you thought you were living in. It's realizing the person you trusted most was capable of something you never imagined. And once that wall breaks, you don't look at anything the same way again.
We went back to therapy in mid-April. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could fix what was broken. Back then, I still didn't know about the affair. All I knew was that something felt off. I felt small in my own marriage, like everything that went wrong was somehow my fault again. But I went anyway. Not to prove a point, not to win her back, but because I believed love meant showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're bleeding. I remember sitting across from the therapist, and she looked at me and said, "Jake, you carry so much guilt. Do you know where that comes from?" And I didn't. Not at the time. But damn, looking back now, I do. It came from years of swallowing what I needed, of blaming myself every time Lauren shut down or pulled away, of believing that if I had just been better, more patient, more loving, more perfect, then maybe she would have stayed emotionally present. Maybe she wouldn't have looked for someone else. In those sessions, I started seeing the pattern. How I was so afraid of being the bad guy that I stopped standing up for myself. I never called her out when I felt unloved. Never said "this hurts me" because I knew it would somehow become about how I wasn't being understanding enough. And the worst part? I believed it. That's the power of subtle emotional imbalance. It doesn't scream. It doesn't leave bruises. It makes you question your reality, bit by bit, until you're convinced that your pain isn't real. Only hers is. Even when I gave up drinking for good, after struggling through it early in our engagement, even then, it never felt like enough. I've been sober for almost 3 years now. Not a sip, not a slip. Not even now when my whole world's cracked open. Because I made a promise. To her, yes, but more importantly, to myself. That I'd become the man I could be proud of. That I'd never go back to hiding from my own pain. And in those therapy sessions, I started seeing something that both hurt and healed. I was trying, I was growing, I was committed. But you can't be the only one in a relationship who's willing to do the work. You can't keep showing up to fix something if the other person stopped bringing their tools months ago. Lauren told me during one session that she resented me. Had been for months, quietly, secretly. Since the fall, she said. And all I could think was, why didn't you tell me? Why did you wait until the cracks turned into a crater? But that was the pattern. She withheld, I blamed myself, and we both pretended that the surface level smiles meant we were okay. It's strange, you know. You go into therapy thinking you're going to repair a relationship, but sometimes you end up repairing yourself. Because there's no ceremony for this part, no vows, no music, just a quiet room, a few signed papers, and the slow sound of a heart letting go. Lauren and I came to an agreement. We were getting divorced. No screaming, no fighting, just silence. The same kind that had been growing between us for months, now made permanent. And yet, it didn't feel real at first. You don't just flip a switch after 6 years. You don't just stop loving someone because they hurt you. There's grief in divorce, even when it's the right thing to do.
I packed up my things with hands that had once built this home. Every drawer felt like a memory. Every piece of furniture had a shadow of us living in it. And yet, the air was lighter. Not because I was happy, but because, for the first time, I wasn't carrying all the weight alone. There was no dramatic goodbye, no teary last embrace, just two people who used to dream together, now walking in opposite directions. What still haunts me? It's not the affair, not anymore. It's the realization that she never really saw me, not fully. Not the man who gave up drinking because he wanted to build a future, not the man who sat through therapy willing to look at every flaw in the mirror, not the man who kept choosing her even when he was hurting too. She saw what she needed to see, and when that no longer served her, she left, emotionally first, then physically. Even the way she told her mother about the divorce. "I'm just really tired," she said. No mention of the affair, no mention of the truth, just tired. As if this was just a long nap we both needed. But tired doesn't justify betrayal. Exhaustion doesn't excuse dishonesty, and I wasn't going to carry her silence anymore. So I told her mother the truth, and in that moment, something shifted inside me. For once, I wasn't protecting her image. I wasn't covering for her or explaining away her choices. I was simply being honest. With her, with myself. And it felt like breathing for the first time in months. We're making our own plans now, separate futures. No more we, just me and whatever comes next. And it's strange how quiet it feels, but also how peaceful. Because love shouldn't feel like walking on glass. It shouldn't mean losing yourself just to keep someone else from leaving. And now, after everything, I finally understand. Sometimes, letting go isn't giving up. Sometimes, it's the bravest thing you can do. People think heartbreak ends with the breakup. But the truth is, it begins there. Because after the papers are signed, after the house is quiet, after the what-ifs fade into it is what it is, you're left with the hardest part, facing yourself. And for the first time in a long time, I did. I sat in the wreckage of what we were and looked at the man I'd become. Not perfect, but present. Not broken, but cracked open in all the places that needed light. I've learned more about myself in these last few months than I did in years of marriage. Not just about what I want from love, but what I deserve. Because love shouldn't make you small. It shouldn't silence your needs or punish your vulnerability. Real love sits beside you in the darkness. It listens when you whisper, "I'm not okay." And it stays anyway. And now, I believe that kind of love exists because I've started giving it to myself. I still go to therapy, still show up for the hard conversations. Not for her, for me. I'm not trying to win anyone back. I'm not waiting for closure that'll never come. I'm just trying to become the kind of man who, when love finally finds him again, will know how to hold it without losing himself. I want a family. I still do. And someday, when it's right, when it's real, I believe I'll have that. Because I've faced my demons. I've stayed sober. I've walked through betrayal without becoming bitter. And I've learned that healing isn't about forgetting what hurt you. It's about honoring what it taught you. So here I am. Not where I thought I'd be. Not who I thought I'd be with. But I'm okay. Actually, more than okay. I'm free. And I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. Because sometimes the person you needed all along was you. If you've ever loved someone who broke you, or if you've ever walked away from something that was slowly destroying you, then you know this story isn't just mine. It's ours. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to let go of someone you thought was forever? I read every single message, and your stories matter too. And if this story meant something to you, hit that like button so more people can find it. Subscribe for more true stories about love, loss, and the courage to begin again. Because healing doesn't happen alone.